Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about group influence and how it can lead to prejudice. Um, we know in social psychology that individuals' behavior is definitely influenced by groups, and that people behave much differently in a group than they would if they were on their own. People would do a lot of things that they wouldn't necessarily do by themselves in a large group of people. We are definitely influenced by other people, and we're especially influenced by larger groups of people. So people often, when they're in a large group, have this sense of de-individuation, and what that means is that we sort of have this diminished sense of personal responsibility. We sort of have this sense of anonymity as well when we're in a large group. So we think that we can get away with stuff, looting, things like that. Although today with cameras and social media posts and things like that, more and more people are getting caught for looting and things like that. But oftentimes people do things that they wouldn't normally do in a large group. And also, people are willing to say and do things that we wouldn't normally do when we feel anonymous. And what about like social media, Twitter, places like that? Do people say things on social media that they would never say in person? Absolutely, especially on Twitter. I think some platforms are much more negative than other platforms. Twitter being one of the ones that seems very negative. People really attack other people and say some pretty horrible stuff, and they probably would never say that kind of stuff to the person if they were in front of them. I think a lot of times we assume that we're anonymous, and so we're much more willing to say some pretty terrible things to people when we're on social media. There was a study done in Israel where they looked at what are the factors that cause people to really feel anonymous and be willing to say some pretty rude and mean stuff. They found that eye contact was the key factor. If somebody had to look somebody in the eye and tell them something mean, they were much more likely to not do that. So we're much more sensitive about what we say to other people when they're in front of us and we have to look at them, and especially if we look into their eyes. We I think don't intentionally want to be hurtful to other people, but I think sometimes when we're on Twitter or social media of any kind, we don't really see the other person. We don't really think we're attacking another person, and yet we really are. So people are really much more willing to say mean things when they feel like they're anonymous. So it's not just acting badly in a group. It's like they feel like they're in this huge group and they feel anonymous. They don't feel like anybody's going to find out who they are. And if you think about it, Twitter handles, you don't necessarily put your real name in there, so you can be completely anonymous. I always saw a video in my in-person class where celebrities read mean tweets that people have posted about them, and it's pretty awful to think of why would somebody be sitting at their house saying such horrible things about a famous person just to be mean, just to try to be hurtful. So, it sort of created this strange atmosphere that would never occur if we were all in person. If you met a celebrity that you didn't like, you wouldn't be going on about how stupid they are. You would be as polite as possible, right? Another thing that social media has created, and this is something that it's a phenomenon that social psychology has studied for a very long time. So it's not just about social media, but social media has allowed more and more people to join different groups and also to just pay attention to that particular group. So group polarization is when people get together in a group where they have very similar viewpoints, and they share those similar viewpoints. It reinforces those viewpoints, and they feel stronger and stronger in their viewpoints. So they get more extreme in their viewpoint because they're only hearing that one viewpoint, and they're getting reinforced by all these other people who think the same thing that they do. So they think they must be right. And so, their group is the in group and the other group is totally wrong and we're not going to listen to them. So group polarization occurs when groups get together and increase or have become more extreme in their viewpoints. You think about white supremacists, they get together and they feel like their viewpoint is right because they're hearing from all these other people that think the same horrible things that they do. And yet, they probably refuse to listen to their family members or friends' viewpoint because, they think that their group is right. So the anti-vaccine people that don't believe in vaccines or are concerned about vaccines, they're going to search the internet for all the negative information about vaccines. Some of it's probably not accurate information, some of it's probably fake news. And then they're going to focus on that information. And if somebody, a family member, a doctor, tells them that information that they got is false, they don't believe it. And especially if they hang out with other people that believe that same thing, their viewpoint gets much stronger and they get much more difficult to talk to because they don't want to hear it. They believe so solidly in their viewpoint that nobody else's viewpoint matters. So that's group polarization, where you get so polarized because you're involved in a group that has an extreme viewpoint. That's happening so much today because of social media. People can join these groups on social media and only pay attention to those particular groups. So one of the things that is a problem, and your homework assignment is about filter bubbles. And what that means is that when you go onto Twitter, you go onto Facebook, you go onto Instagram, those websites, those apps, actually, I guess, keep track of all of your information. They have a picture of who they think you are. They a lot of times will label you as a liberal or a conservative. And if they label you, say, as a conservative, they filter out all those posts that aren't conservative, even posts from friends that you would want to hear. So you're in this sort of filter bubble because Facebook or Twitter wants you to stay on their app as long as possible. And so they figure if you're only seeing things that you like, you're going to stay on their app longer. So your Facebook page is tailored to your opinions, your searches. So it keeps track of your searches, your likes, the links that you click on, your friends, their viewpoints. So it's pretty scary to think that they know all this information about you. They have a picture of who they think you are, and they only send you that information that they think you want to hear. So you don't even get a chance to consider an opposing viewpoint, and it polarizes your view even more. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie The Social Dilemma. It's not really a movie, it's more of a documentary on Netflix, but it really talks about this whole problem with social media and how they have engineers sitting around a table in these tech companies that are trying to figure out ways to grab your attention. And they're reaching out and grabbing the attention of kids and teenagers that are a little bit more easily manipulated. And they're also talking about this whole polarization problem and how we're so divided as a society today because of the social media tailoring all this information to us rather than giving us the whole picture. It used to be that news people were supposed to be neutral. They were just supposed to give you the news. They weren't supposed to, and the whole news, not just give you opinions about it. And today, you can watch Fox News, you can watch CNN, and you can get totally different information and totally different viewpoints. And not even know that you're really missing a lot of information that's really important. So it's really important to be aware of the fact that these filter bubbles exist and that we're only getting some information. We're not getting all of the information. And so we definitely want to make sure that we seek out information and we listen to other people as well. Even your Google searches are personalized based on your browsing history and likes. If I searched dogs, I'm going to get different dogs than you're going to get because they know and they remember what kind of dogs maybe you searched for in the past or things that you might have looked at in the past. They're going to pull all that information and they're going to try to give you information that you want. And in some ways that's kind of nice. I look at a lot of psychology stuff online, so they're going to send me all the psychology related stuff first. So it's not all bad except for we're missing information sometimes that could be really important, and it shocked me to find out that when you put something in Google, I thought everybody got the same search results, but absolutely not. We all get different search results, which is kind of freaky. And I think part of your homework assignment is to have somebody else in your family look up something, versus you log in as themselves or in their computer. It'd be interesting to see whether they get a different result. So all of this social media, and Google tech stuff shows us what it thinks we want to see, because it wants us to be happy and it wants us to see that information that we want to see, and we're not even aware that we're missing things. So it's something really important to be aware of, that we really are getting skewed and more polarized because we're only seeing one side of the story much of the time. So thank you for listening.